Imagine finding out that um, the bitter taste of your morning coffee, or, the sudden spike of anxiety about your Tuesday commute, and even the jagged shape of the mountain outside your window,
Well,
that they're all generated by the exact same piece of code.
right, like a single underlying operating system for reality.
Exactly. So today, we're taking a deep dive into a blueprint for reality that claims to have actually found that code. We are looking at translated excerpts from a philosophical text titled 36-8 Trigram Arrays, The Array of Structure by Zeffing.
Which is a fascinating read, I have to say.
It really is. And the mission of this deep dive is to explore the text's central, uncompromising premise. Basically, that absolutely everything in the universe is defined by its, quote, structure.
Yeah.
And we aren't just talking about, the physical arrangement of atoms here. We're going to unpack the text's radical mechanism for escaping human suffering by, well, entirely reformatting the rigid architecture of our own consciousness.
I think to really grasp this, it requires stepping back and looking at your reality through a highly specific systemic lens.
Right.
The text presents a worldview where the physical, the sensory, and the spiritual are all deeply intertwined components of a single mechanical system. It basically asks you to suspend your usual categories of thought. So to stop separating a physical object, like a rock, from an abstract experience, like an emotion.
Which is hard to do.
Very hard. But wants you to view them both as different manifestations of structural geometry.
The text lays this out with zero ambiguity, too. It states that without structure, there is no existence. Period.
Yeah, nothing at all.
The shape, the properties, and the very nature of all things are determined purely by their structure. Like, it uses the example of trees. A peach tree bears peaches, and a willow tree does not bear fruit, not because of some mystical, unknowable force, but purely because of their internal structural blueprints.
What stands out to me is just the sheer unrelenting exhaustiveness of how the text applies this rule.
Yeah. It forces this concept into every single corner of human perception. The text explicitly argues that the taste of sweetness, sourness, bitterness, saltiness, and spiciness are physically determined by the structure of the food.
Wow.
It goes further to claiming the specific colors of the rainbow, red, orange, yellow, green, indigo, blue, purple are all determined by the structure of colors.
Wait, it even categorizes odors this way, right?
It does, yes.
Like a beautiful fragrance, a terrible stench, something pungent, or a highly specific muttony or fishy smell. These are entirely dictated by the structure of the odor itself.
Exactly. Anything perceived by touch is dictated by structure, too.
It really makes you reconsider how you interact with the world, honestly. I mean,
Yeah.
we tend to think of smells or colors as these subjective floating experiences, but the text says no, they are rigid structural outputs.
It's a completely deterministic view of nature. Mountains possess a mountain nature because of their mountain structure. Water has water nature due to its water structure. People have human nature, and animals have animal nature. Everything acts strictly according to its structural design.
Okay, let's unpack this. Think of reality like the ultimate set of building blocks.
I like that, right?
Like the same basic plastic can make a pirate ship or a castle, depending entirely on how it's snapped together.
That's a great analogy.
The text basically describes the universe as countless structures of astronomical proportions working in an orderly fashion without chaos. Everything follows its own kind.
And this totality, this massive interlocking system of blueprints, is what the text calls the structure array.
Which brings us to the catch. If everything is determined by structure, and every single thing is part of this structured array, then human beings are subject to the exact same architectural law.
Right, we don't get a pass.
We don't get a free pass just because we possess complex thoughts. We are locked into what the text calls the human array.
The text frames this human array as a profound form of confinement, actually. Because you possess a human structure, you are strictly confined to a specific spatial and experiential environment, which is the human world.
Yeah.
You cannot simply choose to live in a celestial world any more than, say, a fish can choose to live in the canopy of a tree. It is a fundamental physical and spiritual restraint.
The picture the text paints of this human array is pretty sobering, I have to say. It views the human structure as a heavy, exhausting burden.
It really does.
It argues that to be in the human array means you are essentially doomed to spend your entire life bustling about for food, clothing, shelter, and transportation.
Because living in the human world inevitably means being constrained by its specific structural rules. The author's logic is that the human biological and societal structure inherently requires maintenance.
Right, the upkeep.
Yes, the upkeep. You need shelter, you need calories, you need warmth. Therefore, without escaping this array entirely, you simply cannot expect to live leisurely. You are structurally obligated to struggle.
So the anxiety you feel about paying rent or buying groceries isn't a personal failure.
No, not at all. It is a feature of the human structural programming.
Wait, I have to stop you there and address a highly specific point the source makes on this topic, because this is where it gets a bit controversial.
Oh, the family aspect?
Yes. This text categorizes love, marriage, and family, the things most of us consider the entire point of living, the ultimate joys of the human experience, as structural traps.
It does.
It explicitly asserts that living in a marriage and family inevitably entangles a person in troubles, and that to escape human suffering, one must step out of them. I mean, how does that logic hold up? How does a family become a cage?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the text evaluates family purely through the lens of structural obligation. Within this framework, marriage and family are the heaviest anchors keeping a ship tied to the human port.
Okay, I see.
If you have a family, you are structurally mandated to provide, to protect, to worry, and to plan for the future. You are tethered to the human timeline.
Because you care about what happens to them.
Exactly. The text argues that behavior is entirely downstream of structure. A dog cannot engage in human commerce, not because it lacks the desire, but because its structural array physically and mentally prohibits it.
Right.
The text applies that exact same rigid boundary to humans trying to achieve lasting peace. If you maintain the structural components of a human life, like a family unit, you will inevitably generate human worries.
You cannot maintain the tethers and expect to float away. It forces an all-or-nothing architectural shift.
Yes.
The text uses a traditional phrase here. It says, to jump out of the three realms and not be bound by the five elements, you have to leave the human structural components completely behind to enter this celestial structure array.
And that is the core friction of this philosophy for a modern reader, I think. It demands recognizing that the things bringing you joy in the human array are the very same structures guaranteeing your continued suffering within it.
Okay, so if the goal is to install the celestial operating system and escape the human array, that implies our current human hard drive is full of corrupt files.
Or at least incompatible files.
Right, but we are fundamentally built like humans, so how do we change our nature?
The text provides a remarkably mechanical solution to this ancient spiritual problem. It argues that to change the nature of a thing, you have to change its structure. If the structure remains unchanged, the nature will not change no matter how much you wish or pray for it to.
So no shortcuts.
None. You cannot meditate your way out of the human array if your underlying structure remains human.
What's striking here is how modern the text's solution is. It doesn't rely on abstract mysticism. It uses a mechanical analogy.
Yeah, the computer metaphor.
Exactly. It literally points to computers, noting that they're updated rapidly because their structures change. It essentially tells us we need to reformat our hard drive. We have to delete the human software to make room for the celestial upgrade.
The specific mechanism described is changing your, quote, non-material structure. And when the text talks about non-material structure, it isn't just speaking metaphorically.
Yeah.
It posits that our consciousness, our thoughts, attachments, deeply held beliefs, and reactive emotions form a rigid, invisible architecture. It is a psychological geometry.
Wow.
By formatting human consciousness and reinstalling celestial consciousness, you are literally bending the bars of that cage. The text states, as long as consciousness changes, the non-material structure of life will change.
Okay, let's look at the delete list then. If we are formatting the hard drive, what exactly is taking up all that space?
A lot.
Yeah, the text provides a massive inventory of what qualifies as human consciousness, and it starts with societal and relational programming. We are told to delete nationalism, religion, political party affiliation, ethnicity, and again, marriage and family consciousness.
Because all of those are tribal identifiers. They are structures designed to separate us from them, which inherently breeds conflict, defense, and the need to accumulate resources for your specific group.
Makes sense.
A celestial structure, according to the text, simply cannot harbor divisions.
Then you have the negative emotions and traits. Jealousy, resentment, anger, selfishness, greed, laziness, competition, antagonism, and possession.
It's quite the list.
Oh, it goes on. It even lists fear, worry, anxiety, and scariness.
Those emotions are essentially the static generated by a radio receiver tuned to the human frequency. As long as your non-material structure is built to receive the human frequency, you will hear the static of survival and ambition.
So you have to physically rebuild the radio's antenna.
Exactly.
And then we get to the pursuits. The text explicitly says we must delete the pursuit of fame, profit, status, merit, ancestral glory, eternal fame, longevity, and wealth.
Yeah.
The inclusion of ancestral glory is particularly fascinating to me. Human society is so obsessed with legacy, right? Passing down names, building statues, ensuring we are remembered.
Legacy is the ultimate anchor to linear human time. The desire for ancestral glory or eternal fame is just the ego's attempt to achieve immortality within the human array.
Because we know we're going to die physically.
Right. But the text proposes escaping the human array altogether. To a celestial being, the concept of a human legacy would be meaningless, restrictive clutter. It binds your consciousness to the past and the future, preventing you from existing purely in the present structure.
The text goes even further and targets spiritual ambition too.
Yeah.
It says we have to delete the pursuit of magical powers and special abilities.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, because you'd assume a text about becoming a celestial being would lean heavily into gaining supernatural powers. Levitation, reading minds, that sort of thing.
Well, the desire for magical powers is really just spiritual materialism.
Spiritual materialism.
Yeah, it is human greed wearing a spiritual costume. Wanting special abilities is about wanting control, dominance, or a shortcut around the natural order.
Oh, I see.
Escaping the array requires a complete dismantling of the human ego's desire to achieve or acquire, even if the things you want to acquire are spiritual.
Now, there's one item on this delete list that presents a massive contradiction, at least in my mind. The text states, wanting to change nature is human consciousness.
Yes.
Isn't this entire philosophy a manual on how to change our nature from human to celestial? Isn't the very act of trying to upgrade our operating system an act of wanting to change nature?
This tension highlights a really profound layer of the philosophy. The text defines wanting to change nature as a human flaw, referring to our constant, exhausting need to manipulate our environment, force outcomes, and engineer reality to suit our preferences.
So it's about the striving.
Exactly. The leap to a celestial state requires giving up the very striving that started your spiritual journey. You have to want the upgrade enough to begin the formatting process, but eventually the wanting itself is revealed as a human program.
It is a ladder you use to climb over a wall.
That's it. And once you are over, you must throw the ladder away.
Okay, so if we successfully empty the trash, if all that human programming, the anxiety, the tribal labels, the striving, the bustling for transportation, if that's all gone, what fills the empty hard drive? What does the celestial OS actually look like in practice?
The text outlines a non-material structure characterized by embracing things as they are. It involves engaging in what the author elegantly calls naturally come-and-go relations.
Naturally come-and-go relations. I like the sound of that.
Practically, this means moving through the world without friction. You act in accordance with your nature, you seize opportunities organically as they arise, and you walk in step with the laws of nature, rather than trying to dam the river or change its course.
It sounds incredibly light. Like the text mentions feeling content no matter where you are or what you are doing, following your destiny and being completely carefree.
It does.
It completely sidesteps the common misconception that enlightenment requires this lifeless, punishing, ascetic existence where you just stare at a cave wall for decades.
Many philosophies frame liberation as the cessation of all experience, but this text specifically counters that.
Yeah, it explicitly says that enjoying life, playing, and entertaining oneself are manifestations of celestial consciousness. You can still experience joy, but it's a joy unattached to outcomes or fears of loss.
Because the playfulness is grounded in a vital spiritual core, the text asserts that surrendering life to the, quote, greatest creator and allowing the process of life to be arranged by Tao is the ultimate expression of celestial consciousness.
Wow.
It's a profound relinquishing of the steering wheel. You aren't forcing the vehicle down the road anymore. You are letting the road guide the vehicle. Your non-material structure becomes perfectly aerodynamic to the flow of the universe.
Okay, so if a listener is tracking with this and thinking about how much of their daily anxiety comes from trying to control the uncontrollable, what is the instruction manual? Like, how do you practically install this aerodynamic celestial OS when you still have to, go to work on Monday?
Right, the practical application. The text's instruction relies on an apprenticeship model for consciousness. You must understand and imitate the lifestyle of celestials. You look at those who possess the structure you desire, and you meticulously mirror it.
It names specific celestial worlds to study, right? The 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, and the Celestial Islands continent.
Yes.
We are supposed to understand their lifestyle, learn from them, and embody their mindset bit by bit.
Because by imitating a celestial non-material structure, piece by piece, you enter a behavioral feedback loop. You act without grasping, you react without anger, you engage in naturally come-and-go relations.
And that changes the code.
Over time, these actions rewrite your internal code. Once human consciousness is replaced by celestial consciousness, you logically and structurally no longer fit in the human array.
Yeah.
You transition to the celestial world because, fundamentally, you have become the new structure.
So the overarching theory here reframes absolutely everything, from the physical taste of sweetness to the heavy dread of a Monday morning. It's all structural programming.
Every bit of it.
We are currently operating inside a human structure array, defined by our need to bustle, worry, and maintain societal tethers. But by identifying these traits and consciously formatting our human consciousness, deleting our tribal attachments, our obsession with legacy, our need to control nature, we can reinstall a celestial OS. We can embrace things as they are, play, surrender to the Tao, and free ourselves from the human array.
And regardless of whether you take the 10,000-year world as a literal physical place or a profound metaphor, the text offers a highly effective mental exercise for your daily life.
Oh, for sure.
It challenges you to look at your stress, your competitive urges, and your anxieties about wealth and ask, is this an absolute, inescapable truth of my existence, or is it just human programming? Viewing your worries as a structural default setting that you can theoretically choose to uninstall is a powerful way to mentally drop the burdens of the human experience.
Because you are not your anxiety.
Right. Your anxiety is just a file running on your current hardware.
It allows you to look at your own mind like a cluttered desktop full of legacy software you no longer need to open. But, the text leaves us with a final, highly provocative paradox.
Oh, this is the best part.
It insists that, quote, emotional and life dependence on external factors is human consciousness. Dependence on the external is the very definition of being human.
It is the core mechanism of the human tether. If you need something outside of yourself to feel complete, you are structurally bound to the human array.
Right. So if that is true, then to successfully escape, you must reach a point where you are no longer dependent even on the promise of the 1,000-year world or the celestial realms to find peace. Think about what that implies.
Yeah.
What if the final ultimate step to achieving celestial consciousness is entirely letting go of the desire to achieve it? We started this deep dive looking at the messy, tangled web of reality, seeking a clean blueprint to make sense of it all.
Which is the intense human desire to categorize, organize, and solve the universe.
Exactly. What if the true celestial state is realizing that even the desperate need for a blueprint is just another human program taking up space on your hard drive? Something to think about.